Liquid glass is what happens when Winamp transparent skins and Windows Vista have a baby. And the iPhone Air is what happens when you squish an iPhone mini into a little pancake. What's up, s'mores? I'm Shannon Morse. Welcome to my channel where we dive into tech that is smart, secure, and stylish. So the new iPhone Air just landed, and I will be real with you, coming from an Android super user lifestyle, I did not expect to like this one very much, but after using it for a bit, big thoughts. So let's talk about whether this thin, shiny slab of Apple engineering is worth your hard-earned cash. And when I say hard-earned cash, that's very accurate because this thing starts at $999 for 256 gigs. Now, as the first iteration of what I'm going to assume will be a new line of iPhones, the Air sports a very thin chassis, less cameras, but it also has pretty pro line specs. So who is it for, and is it worth $1,000? Now, at just 5.6 millimeters or 0.22 inches thin and weighing in at just 165 grams or 5.82 ounces, it does feel almost feather light compared to some of my chunkier flagships. Apple did go with a titanium frame. You also have ceramic shield 2 on the front and a ceramic shield backing. It does feel really premium, but not fragile, which is good because I'm a known phone dropper. I drop my phones all the time. And the colors are space black, cloud white, light gold, and sky blue. I saw them at the Apple store, and I think the sky blue was actually my fave, though I went with the light gold because it looked more gold online. But in person, it's a very pale gold color, so I probably would have gotten the blue one instead had I seen them in person before I actually pre-ordered them. Now, I'll mention too, I also tried to bend this thing with quite a bit of force, and it was not very easy to do. Like, you actually have to try to break your phone to really damage it, which is a good sign since such a thin device could have been a sign of it being very, very fragile. And yes, this thing is IP68 rated, so if you drop it in the sink, you will be just fine. Now, the form factor and the design makes this a very beautiful phone. It looks really high-end and very well made. When I took this thing to a pirate festival, which huzzah to my fellow pirates, everyone who held it was quite impressed, and a few people asked me what phone it was because they had never seen one so thin. Thanks to that camera bar too, alongside the back of this phone, which funny enough also houses the Apple Silicon inside of there, it's almost balanced evenly when you put it down on a smooth surface. It's got a little bit of a wobble, but not very much. That'll be even less if you put a case on it. Now, if you're finding this video helpful, a subscribe would mean a lot to me. Subscribing is a very simple way of showing me which videos you find helpful and valuable. Also, I wanted to say a big Patreon shout out to my s'mores. You can join them and support my channel by going to patreon.com/ShannonMorse for perks like early video access and my private Discord. As usual, all of the videos on my channel are free to watch, and I thank my YouTube members and my patrons for making that possible. Okay, let's take a look at the screen now. So Apple gave us a 6.5-inch OLED Super Retina XDR display. So that is 2736 by 1260 pixels. It's also 120 Hz Pro Motion refresh. This is the same as adaptive refresh rates, basically. It also has an always-on display, which, yay, I love the always-on display. There's HDR, dynamic island, so the usual Apple recipe, but it also still looks really gorgeous. And the big kicker here for me, because I live in Colorado and we have tons of sunlight here, is 3000 nits peak brightness outdoors. Even under the Colorado sun, I could still see my screen really clearly. As somebody who's usually rocking Android panels with high nit counts, that one does compete. Also, very noticeable, especially if you have this one side by side with some of the iPhone 17s that also came out. This has a teeny tiny bezel, so the screen is super close to being an edge-to-edge design. Like, that screen-to-body ratio is ridiculous. It looks so good. All right, it's time to talk about the Apple cameras. We are looking at a 48 megapixel Fusion main with sensor shift OIS, plus it doubles as a 2x optical telephoto. Digital zoom is up to 10 times, so this gives you a secondary digital camera with the 12 megapixel 2x telephoto lens. Still, This is just one sensor. Apple is just cropping that 48 megapixels to 12 and calling it a day. So that means if you're zooming in and taking a picture, it's just cropping your bigger megapixels. I would have been a lot more keen on this phone if it offered more in terms of the lenses. The S25 Edge, for example, which is the other thin phone on the market, has a dual camera system on the back with a 200 megapixel wide and a 12 megapixel ultra wide, and it does take some really great pictures. Now, since this camera bump packs a lot of the internals for the phone to make it so thin, it's no wonder they only put one lens in here, but that is a pretty major trade-off when you're talking about a $1,000 device. It does pack in a f1.6 aperture, which is great. It does give me some really nice photos. One thing that is a net positive is how consistent the photography and the videos are out of the iPhone Air. Color accuracy is very much on point. One caveat I'll point out in just a little bit: the pictures are really clear. My main complaint here is the lack of options. There is no macro, no ultra wide option, so no close-up photos of my nails or food or product photos for my videos, unless I zoom in on them, but then you lose some of that clarity and some of that detail. The zoom photos were, in general, pretty subpar. 10x zoom was not great, so if you take a lot of zoom photos or you need detailed product shots, you would want to skip this phone. Also, reds were noticeably bright, especially with my sunset photos with direct sunlight. As an example, my skirt for this costume is actually orange. It's not red, but the photos make it look a lot more red. Also, portraits were pretty outstanding. You know how I constantly bark about bad portrait mode on an Android phone? This one did such a good job on portraits. I have pirate photos of my friends that look pretty amazing. My nighttime photos were okay, but I wasn't entirely impressed given the epic nighttime photos that I get out of a Pixel or a Samsung. For general usage, the night mode is going to be fine. It gives you clear photos with less noise. There's still some noise in there, but less than I was expecting. Some good balance of exposure and color saturation. Video maxes out at 4K 60, and it also supports slow-mo and action modes as expected. Cheers! Yay!
Hoist the colors high, heave-ho, thieves and beggars, never shall we die.
Now, the front camera is an 18 megapixel with center stage for video calls and wider photos. It does support 4K Dolby Vision video. You get features like dual capture, which means you can shoot with the front and the back cameras at the same time. Coming from Android, where we have seen 8K and periscope zooms, the iPhone Air feels a lot more modest, but it does nail consistency and usability. For my selfies, it does not over sharpen them, so my skin looks very normal and realistic. The color accuracy is again really great, and the photos came out clear, even in my bouncing, moving vehicle. Now, in terms of that center stage thing, this will automatically zoom out or rotate the orientation from portrait to landscape, so you don't have to turn your phone physically, your hand, to the side to get a group selfie. It's very neat, it definitely works, and it does seem like you will get the same quality out of a center stage photo versus one that you have physically rotated on its side to get that nice landscape group selfie mode. The selfie lens is also an f1.9 aperture, so it looks very satisfactory for photos and videos. Now, this thing is powered by an A19 Pro chip, hardware accelerated ray tracing, Apple's new Intelligence AI integration is built in. This phone runs pretty smooth, though I did notice a few hiccups. It took a little bit longer to finish an operating system update and the original setup process on the Air than it did on the 17 Pro. When I was playing Genshin Impact on high graphical settings, there were a couple of very minor stutters during an action sequence, but nothing major. The GPU in here is 5 cores versus the 6 core, which is found in the 17 Pro models. So maybe that's why I noticed a slight difference. But heat dissipation is very consistent along the back of it. It does get warm during your gameplay and benchmarking tests, but but not concerning. Stress tests show that it's not very powerful in comparison to many other phones on the market though, and there is no vapor chamber in here. So how does that translate to the real world? Some very minor stutters, but no major issues. Now, Apple Intelligence is Apple's AI answer to things like Google Gemini or Samsung's Galaxy AI, and it is baked right into your apps. So you can summarize messages, you can edit photos, you can get help with writing. Apple does emphasize on-device processing for privacy, and as a security nerd, I love that so much. Apple also claims up to 27 hours of video playback, so fast charging is 50% in 30 minutes with a 20-watt charger, and yes, it is USB-C now, as you can see right here. But just a heads up, in particular with the iPhone Air, that port is only USB 2 speed, so if you're transferring video files or something like that over USB, this one's only USB 2. The 17 Pro buyers are going to get faster USB speeds, but wireless charging and regular charging are going to be just fine. Now, I took this thing off the charger at 10:20 a.m. I did play some games with it, I did a few benchmarks, I also took a bunch of photos and videos, and then I did some generic social media and some work, email, stuff like that. The benchmarks in the games took up a huge percentage of the battery here. They drained a good 39% of the battery power in about 2 hours with on-screen time. Other tasks and YouTube streaming kept the battery drain pretty steady for the rest of the day. I hit 5% battery at 8:30 p.m., proving to me that yes, you can get a full day of battery life out of an iPhone Air. In total, I have my screen on for about 10 hours, and that was with a lot of pro user performance usage. So if you're using it like a normal user, you will get longer battery life. It does work with MagSafe and Qi 2. There is an optional iPhone Air MagSafe battery accessory in case you run out of battery, but honestly, who wants to put a battery brick on the back of their thin phone? Like, one of the points of you buying this phone is because it's so thin. So why do you want to put a battery, like smack that thing on the back of it? Also, that accessory is only really compatible with the Air because it's too long and it hits the cameras on the other models. So if you buy that thing and then you decide to switch to a different iPhone, then you're gonna be kind of out of luck with this battery that you can only use with this specific phone. Now we've got upgraded connectivity here. There's Wi-Fi 7, Bluetooth 6, dual eSIM, sorry, no physical SIM slot here, and Apple's 2nd gen ultra wideband chip. You've also got satellite features for emergencies, crash detection, and roadside assistance. Now I noticed immediately that the speakers were not very loud and powerful, and lo and behold, it's because there's only one speaker, and it's found back here. That's it. There's one solo speaker housed in that camera bar. So bass is practically non-existent. There's no stereo separation, but audio for calls and podcasts is going to be plenty clear, and it does get plenty loud as well. Also, just a quick mention, because everybody always asks about call quality, I connected this to my T-Mobile connection and it did not drop my calls. I also had no problems with my Wi-Fi 7 connection in my household when I was connected here, so I would say the connection was just fine, no drops there. You have a few buttons on here. There's an action button right here that's customizable. You can set it to open the camera, toggle focus mode, or even run shortcuts. Very handy, something I wish more Android phones would adopt. And then you have the camera control over here, which I don't think is handy. I don't think any Android phones need to adopt that, but that camera control still exists. I rarely use it. I did test the camera button during the Pirate Festival when I was taking a bunch of photos, and it still works about the same as the introduced button that we got on the 16 last year, so I knew how to use it, but it is definitely not my first thought. Wait, when was that thing introduced? Was it last year or the year before? I don't remember. I did test it, but I just never use it. Okay, and then we have iOS 26, which comes on all the new models. It'll be updated eventually on all sorts of other iPhones as well. The newest operating system has a redesigned user interface, which is called Liquid Glass, and it looks like translucent glassy images, and it refracts light and colors based on motion and inputs. I actually think it looks really cool and kind of nostalgic because it totally reminds me of Winamp liquid translucent skins. If you know, you know, and Windows Vista, but it has upscaled in interactive graphics and interactive designs. So it's like the new generation of these things that I remember when I was growing up from completely different operating systems, but still, It's pretty much the same thing. So if you're familiar with Winamp and Vista, like you will open this and be like, oh yeah, that totally looks the same. I'm sorry, Apple, but it does. Okay, so the camera app is redesigned. There's been some updates to the lock screen, like you can move your widgets to the bottom now, and on your home screen, you can make all of your icons clear. There's also a 3D effect that you can add to your wallpaper to make it kind of pop, and this is called Spatial Scene. It looks pretty cool, but it does not work well on anime wallpapers, I noticed. It works a lot better on like real world photography. So who is the market for this phone? I mean, this is like if somebody took the older iPhone mini 13, you know, the little squat little iPhone mini 13, and they squished it so that it flattened into a pancake and it just spread out a little bit. That's kind of what this reminds me of. I let my friend who owns a mini hold this, and she really liked the form factor. The lightweight feel plus the thin style made it very easy for her to hold. So mini owners, if you are looking for a replacement since they canceled that line, try holding one of these in person. You might really like it. It certainly feels refined, but it is lacking some of those performance and camera specs that I perceive as a requirement whenever hitting $1,000. Sure, it's an iPhone. iPhones are expensive, but at this point I can say, sure, it's an Android. Androids are expensive too, and you get more bang for your buck with a Galaxy S25 Edge. So the pros for this thing, it is thin, it's lightweight, it's got that premium titanium build, so it's certainly durable. It's got a gorgeous 6.5-inch OLED display with crazy brightness. The selfie camera is awesome. I love it so much. And shout out to the cool features that are included in iOS 26. The A19 Pro chip is pretty fast, but on the con side, it is a little bit slower processing than the Pro models. There's no physical SIM. eSIM only may be a pain for some, especially if you want to take it overseas and just pop in a SIM card from another country. I do that all the time when I travel overseas. USB-C is capped at USB 2 speeds, which is not going to affect most people, but if you're a content creator, it might. Then you got the telephoto and the cameras, which are limited compared to Android flagships, and the battery drains quite fast with higher processing activities. So what do you think? Does the iPhone Air compete with Android's flagships, or is Apple just kind of selling us on the thinness of this phone? I would love to know what you think, so drop your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time. Bye, y'all. I promise I'm not going to iPhone. I'm gonna stick with Android. You're welcome.